Alright, so this is our final video on this virus, bacteria, pathogen unit, and this is going to be on vaccines. Last video was on antibiotics. Antibiotics and vaccines are two completely different things. Vaccines are biological preparations that improve an individual's immunity to a disease. So these vaccines are going to prime our immune system for a particular disease, get it ready to fight that disease. And unlike antibiotics, which are only useful for combating pathogenic bacteria, vaccines can be effective against a variety of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungi, eukaryotic parasites, and so on and so forth. So, vaccines are much more general in fighting these biological entities that make us sick. The first vaccine was developed against a disease called smallpox, and I'm sure hardly any of you are familiar with this disease anymore because it's largely been eradicated or eliminated from the world. But this was a major problem a long time ago, and it just resulted in this disfiguring, severe rashes and blisters, as you can see in this poor gentleman in this picture. And it also had a high mortality rate or high death rate of 30 to 35% of people who came down with smallpox ended up dying from the disease. Very serious thing. And in 1796, a man named Edward Jenner, I'm going to bold this because this is very important. I think along with antibiotics, development of vaccines were the second most important discovery in the field of medicine. He developed a smallpox vaccine. He basically overheard a milkmaid, a woman who worked around dairy farms and cattle, brag that she would never get smallpox because she already had a disease called cowpox, which was a much milder disease in humans. But cowpox and smallpox are very closely related. So Jenner took this idea and he took a sample of this cowpox virus from the hand of one of his infected milkmaids and inoculated an 8-year-old boy with it. And weeks later, Jenner exposed the same boy to smallpox, and the boy didn't catch the disease. And by the way, inoculation just means injection of a vaccine. And although this was a successful experiment, this ended up helping a lot of people. It's worth noting that this would probably be very illegal to do today to, take a sample of a disease and purposely infect a little boy with it, and then later on infect the same boy with a very serious disease, smallpox. Nonetheless, this is a long time ago, and this was the first test of his smallpox vaccine. And the idea is that the cowpox was a much milder, less dangerous, closely related version of that virus. So if our immune system could combat cowpox, then the immune system is going to be very prepared if it ever runs into a smallpox virus. And that's the idea, that vaccines really work by mimicking the most dangerous pathogens and then causing our immune system to respond and build up defenses against that pathogen. So it's kind of like playing a scrimmage game and then your football team being ready to go out and play a real game. You're going to be much more prepared after battling these weakened viruses or weakened pathogens or closely related but milder forms of those viruses and pathogens. Then our immune system is going to be able to mount a really serious defense of ourselves when it's finally exposed to the real pathogen. That's the idea behind vaccines. Some examples of vaccines: diphtheria, measles, mumps, rubella, polio. These have all been successful vaccines, and you're probably not familiar with a lot of these diseases just because these vaccines have been so successful. However, there's some major diseases out in the world right now that vaccines have not been successfully developed for, like AIDS, which is caused by the HIV virus, and malaria. Oh, I forgot one thing too. Let me go back to my paint program. A little bit more about how vaccines work. Let's say let's graph this, and I think you'll understand that time is on the x-axis, so the progression of time is down here, and level of antibodies against a particular pathogen is right there. And antibodies are just small chemicals that our body uses to mark pathogens for destruction. So the more antibodies we have in our system, the better equipped our immune system is to fight against pathogens. So this is what happens. Let's say time point 1 right here is the time of vaccination. Let's see what happens to our antibodies with vaccination. And then time point number 2 is the time of infection by the real virus. Okay, so what happens is antibodies to a particular, let's say this is flu, antibodies to a strain of flu are going to be really low. And then once we're infected by a weakened version of that flu virus through a vaccine, our antibodies jump up a little, fight that weakened virus, and then go back down. But our system remembers how those antibodies and our immune cells fought against that pathogen, and our system remembers it and learns from it. So the next time we're exposed to that flu virus, then our body is going to be able to mount a really strong defense against it. So let's say at time point 2, we're actually infected with a real flu virus out in the field. What's going to happen is our bodies are going to now produce a lot of antibodies against that. We're going to be able to fight that virus away, and we're going to be feeling better after that. So that's a good way to think about it in terms of what do the antibodies, or those chemicals that fight disease in our bodies, look like at the time of vaccination, and then with a subsequent infection of that disease. Now going back here. Now tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about opposition to vaccines, and this might seem like a strange thing, but there is a lot of opposition, especially in the United States, to vaccines, and this really isn't anything new. This has happened since the earliest vaccination campaigns and programs. And it's worth noting that doctors and scientists, or at least most doctors and scientists, think that the benefits of vaccines really far outweigh any possible negative side effects. But it's worth mentioning that a lot of people there's a lot of variety of critics that still are against vaccination programs. And critics criticize vaccination programs on safety grounds. Some people believe that vaccines may cause serious side effects, and that our safety studies that are in place right now are inadequate. A lot of people refuse vaccine or object to vaccines on religious grounds. Some religious groups, as we'll find out tomorrow, do not allow for vaccination. And then finally on political grounds too. Some people believe that a mandatory vaccination program that's mandated by the government is an affront to our individual liberties of making a choice whether to take the vaccine or not. We'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow, but that's it for the video, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.